Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The American heavyweight contender Jermaine Franklin is promising a new and improved version of himself when he returns to the ring after a year out. He will be facing Devin Vargas the 23rd of May, and this will be on a Dimitri Salita card on DAZN, and it will be held in Detroit, Michigan. So as you can see here, it's called, the card is, tagline is dubbed Bad Boys. You've got Jermaine Franklin versus Devin Vargas, and if you want to pause this, you can see who else is on the card. But in terms of what we're focusing in, it's the main event. Jermaine Franklin, who had a good fight with Dillian Whyte about a year and a half ago. Arguably, some people thought that he won that fight, and then he went the distance a year ago in April 2023 against Anthony Joshua. Put up a decent performance and went the distance against the big punching Joshua, who has himself, after those losses to Alexander Usyk, had of late a bit of a career renaissance, getting people believing that he's back to his best. And Jermaine Franklin, came out of those fights with a lot of credit. Didn't really hurt Whyte or Joshua, but he was active, he was landing shots, and I think one thing, and this is always going to take you a long way in the heavyweight division, if you have a chin, then that is going to ensure that if you've got the skills and can punch a bit, that you can go a fair distance in the heavyweight division. But one thing that's always been a little bit of a knock on Franklin, and this might be one of the things he's looking to resolve, is he hasn't quite had the power to really trouble guys at the top level. And when he came back after that loss to Joshua and fought Isaac Munoz Gutierrez, you can see here this was in July last year, he had all the shots, put an absolute beating on Gutierrez, just couldn't get him out of there. Absolutely, it was brutal, and that guy Munoz had a chin himself and was just eating shots for fun, eating them like Tic Tacs, like it was nothing. And Franklin obviously wants to show people that he does have another gear, that he can take another step, and that he's improving, and that those losses to Whyte and Joshua aren't necessarily, his high watermark in his career. So in the press release, he says, "I want to show the world the new Jermaine. I have some new smoke to show boxing fans. I learned so much after the Joshua fight. I trust myself and my skills. My team told me if you want the belt, you have to go for it. You will see a new Jermaine, I promise that. I'm so hyped to fight in front of my family and friends. I get a chance to come home and give my family a welcome home knockout. I have been to some great places to fight, but nothing comes close to fighting at home in front of family." And you have him facing Devin Vargas, and so let's not mince words. There's no two ways about it. This is a tune-up, plain and simple. Vargas at this point, who was previously, a good amateur, he was an Olympian at one point. There's only so much shine you can get for 20 years on from that. He's now 42 years old with a record of 22-10. And if you look here, he's coming off a run of 4 losses on the trot, and he's lost 6 of his last 8 fights dating back to Andy Ruiz Jr. in 2018. So Devin Vargas should be there for the taking. But I would note, all the guys that have ever gone on to do something in the heavyweight division, so you can see, you've got Zhang Jilei, Andy Ruiz, and even going further back, Dominic Brazil, Jason Bergman, Kevin Johnson. So he lost by knockout to all those guys. Guys who've beaten him but maybe fallen short at a higher level and haven't got to necessarily that title shot level, such as Junior Fa. Fa was the first guy for Devin Vargas that Vargas actually didn't get knocked out. And since then, Vargas has dropped a couple of fights to Dante Pettigrew. So he's a prospect. He lost to him twice by decision. So Jermaine Franklin needs to separate himself from those 3 losses, the Pettigrew 2 losses, and Junior Fa, and he needs the stoppage. You have Devin Vargas, who does have good skills, can move a bit, can punch a bit, but at 42 years old, he's pretty faded and washed from his prime. Franklin needs to go in there and show us whatever this new thing is. He can't play with his food. He needs to stop him. And I think that's really important for his career from the perspective of there's a lot happening in the heavyweight division, in the upper echelons. You know, if you're in that sort of top 20 range, there's a lot of fights to be had, a lot of Saudi money floating around. And Jermaine Franklin, like a number of other American heavyweights, is a little bit on the outside looking in. So some of these guys, like a Michael Hunter, Cassius Chaney, those two are fighting each other. Jermaine Franklin, you know, they haven't got those Saudi opportunities right now. Some of the stablemates for Dimitri Salita of Franklin's, you know, Jarrell Miller and Otto Wallin have had a taste of that Saudi money. If Franklin goes in there, performs well, gets a stoppage, and he could springboard himself potentially into a big money fight. The Saudis have now branched out to have fights in the United States. They've got one coming up in August in Los Angeles, and obviously they've had a number of events in Saudi Arabia. Franklin surely wants to be part of that mix, but he's got to show the Saudis what he can do and basically put himself in the shop window. Sure, we know he's durable, we know he's got good skills, but he needs to go in there, entertain, and knock some people out. Because ultimately, that is what's going to move the dial, I think, for him in his career. That'll get the Saudis interested in saying to Salita, how about we match Franklin with someone? I mean, because potentially you could see maybe Jermaine Franklin versus Martin Bakole. Maybe Jermaine Franklin versus the winner of Frank Sanchez and Agi Kabiel, if there's not a title shot for those guys. There is some good fights for him to have. Jermaine Franklin versus Hughie Fury. I think there's a number of fights for Franklin potentially below that sort of upper elite level where he can be in, have good matchmaking, and put himself in a good position for bigger fights and huge paydays. So Jermaine Franklin needs to absolutely treat Devin Vargas with disrespect and show the new version and absolutely decimate Vargas. I think for the sake of his career, it's very important that he goes in there, does the business, and looks fantastic. Because if he can't, you know, stop guys, you know, he's obviously got to be putting on a hell of a show as well. Which I think, with the likes of the fights that we've seen, Dillian Whyte and also Anthony Joshua, he was pretty good in those fights. He deserves a lot of credit, but obviously he wants to get past top guys to put himself in the picture for title fights and such. So it's all there for Jermaine Franklin, 23rd of May. He needs to go in there, do a brutal job on Vargas, and move on. What do you make of it all? What do you think is next for Jermaine Franklin? Is this a tune-up that puts him in the shop window for something with the Saudis? Could be. Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.